Hey.
Hi everybody, I'd like to give an overview of the work of Marko Rodin. He's been doing sacred geometry and physics for 40 years, the same time as I have been, and I've realised that his work overlaps with my work in the sense that we look at certain sequences and how we can apply them to coils and physics to create good technology. So his work is all based on the Rodin Coil. So this title would be Marko Rodin, is there a divine code embedded in our number system? And we're going to look at how he evolved this Rodin coil, a torus, but there's three sequences wrapped around the topology. And the punchline is that he discovered it's not just mathematical sequences going around the skin of the torus. He realized that there was also toruses within toruses. It was the space, the plasma in the middle as well, that can create med beds and spacecraft. So this is really exciting technology, but it's all based on the number 9. So his whole life's work for 40 years was to look at the Dublin sequence. So here we have the Rosicrucian chart, and it goes 1, 2, 4. If you look at the top here, it goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 to infinity. And because we don't understand infinity, we have to simplify it to be able to get a handle on it. And the way to do it is to keep taking away the number 9 from all this data. And the shortcut to taking away number 9 is called digit sums, which means we add the digits. So we've got, when we get 16, we say 1 and 6 is 7, and then 32 is 3 plus 2 equals 5. So that's called digital compression. But this is about the law of the octaves. And on the other side of this rare Rosicrucian chart that changed my life, we've got all the musical sequences and the law of the octaves. So this is all about looking at touch, the frequencies of touch, sound, radio, microwaves, infrared, visible light, X-rays and gamma rays. So my journey, when I got this chart 30 years ago, my journey started on looking at the Dublin sequence. So Marko Rodin is all about the Dublin sequence. And there's a lot of nonsense on the internet. There's all these codes on 369 is the universe. But if I look closely at it, I've been trying to interpret Marko Rodin's work for 40 years, and he's got certain sequences running through, but there's all this other stuff and I just don't get it. So what this is about, it's about trying to make sense. And all I can work out is that there's 3 threads. We're going to look at 3 mathematical sequences that are going to be wrapped onto the torus. So the first sequence is the Dublin sequence. We just looked at the chart. So when you get to 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, we add the digits. So 16 is a 7, 32 is a 5, 64 is 10, and 10 is 1 plus 0. But what's interesting about, and this, as we keep going to the powers of 2 to the power of 46, we know we've got 46 chromosomes in every cell, but 2 to the power of 46 is 100 trillion, and that's the number of cells in the human body. So this is all in the powers of 2. But there was an Egyptian creation myth that said, I am 1 that transforms into 2. I am 2 that transforms into 4. I am 4 that transforms into 8. And after this, I am 1 again. So we want to look at how we can compress this digital sequence of Dublin to 6 digits. And we find that when we look at the binary numbers, they keep repeating. They go 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. There is a recursion. And that's what's important. If we didn't have periodicity or recursion, we couldn't do it. So I've shown it here. We look at all the powers of 2, and then we add the digits or take away the number 9, and we get 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. So this is the first thread of 6 digits that's going to be woved or weaved onto the fabric of the torus skin. And then, so Marko Rodin circularizes those 6 digits on the Enneagram. So circle with 9, and then we join a line from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 7 to 5 and back again. And he discovered that when we connect this binary code 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, it's like a phone line to God. The numbers that were missing were the 3, 6, and 9. But notice he doesn't join the 3 and the 6 because 9 is kind of that plasma point. And the other point here is called the emanation point. His whole cosmology is all about this emanation point. And then we can take the same numbers again. Instead of doubling 2, 4, 8, he said, why don't we halve these numbers? So you can go 1 half and a quarter and an eighth. And when you looked at the decimals, so a quarter is 0.25 and an eighth is 0.125. All these numbers kept coming back to the same 6 digits, 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, which repeats and repeats. And then of interest, we found that if we took the Fibonacci spiral, the golden spiral, the sweet spot or the eye of the spiral, when it's circularized, fits almost exactly on top of that emanation point. And these are like the two halves of the brain. So there's a connection, there's a cosmic connection between the simple mathematical code. But what I'm interested in is that if this is 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, that represents like cells dividing or growth and abundance. So I've decided to use that code as a decal that kind of says, let's create abundance. It's a wealth mandala. So that's the idea of looking at certain codes, how we can put them on our windows and let the light come in and amplify that frequency. So that's the first thread. We've turned the doubling sequence, big numbers, into a 6-digit repeat code. And then the second thread is called the multiplication table. So there's the binary doubling circuits. And if your 1 times table goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We know that. But when you look at the 8 times table, if you went 8, 16, 24, 32 and kept compressing them down to single digits, it's a reverse of the 1. So the 8 times table goes 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then if you look at the 2s and the 7s, they're mirror images. The 3 times table goes 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9. But the 6 times goes the other way, 6, 3, 9. And the 4 and the 5. But notice they all add up to 9, the pairs. So 4 and 5 is 9. 3s and 6s are 9. 2 and 7, 1 and 8. It's all about the number 9. And this is important because we just found that the universe is all about pairing and reversibility and mirror imaging. So I have whole courses just on the multiplication table, double digits, reduced to single digits, and this is part of the Rodin Coil, the key to future technology. But if I looked at all the ones, so if I said, look, there's a 1, there's a 1, if I joined all the ones, the 6 ones, and there's also, if I joined all the 8s, let's see what happens. This is called the art of number. When we join all the 1s, that looks like this pattern, and when we join all the 8s, it's a mirror image, and we superimpose them, and that pattern is identical to the atomic structure of platinum crystal. So can you believe that this is why the multiplication table is part of the Torus technologies? We're looking at the atomic structure of platinum crystal done by Professor Müller, in the 1950s. So I decided to show you the importance of the times table, because this is the second thread of the Rodin Coil. We just looked at the 1 and the 8. When you add them together, make platinum crystal, but you can rotate that pattern and get another yantra, and so that's rotated 4 times, 8 times. So you could look at the 3s and the 6s, they double, they superimpose, and they keep becoming exotic yantra, which is another word for yantra is called power art. So then we're looking now at the another code. This is the third code. So code 1 was doubling. The second code was reducing the times table down to single digits. But the third important thread is when we look at the Fibonacci sequence. I don't have the numbers, but when you reduce the Fibonacci numbers, they go 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 24 digits in a circle. And if you said, I'm going to join all the 1s here, you've got 3 1s in a triangle. And if you look at all the 8s, there's 3 8s. So there's a lot of information in the Fibonacci pattern. It all adds up to 108. But if I looked at the gaps in between the 1 and the 8, so I'm going to look at these gaps in between, I end up with getting what Rodin was talking about. I end up getting 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, just by looking at another missing gap sequence. So I've done it again here, this is Rodin's diagram. He's taken the Fibonacci code of 24, And he put 9, instead of 1 at the top of the 24, he put the 9 there to show that, look, we've got 3, 6 and 9, and the 3, 6 and 9 in the Star of David. And in between the 3s, 6s and 9s, he looked at the gaps between those numbers, and he said, look, we've got 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. So there's a hexagon circuit. So this is the third circuit. But most people think that he's talking about 3, 6 and 9. It's not just that. In the Fibonacci code of 24, he says the hexagonal code that he's interested in is this one here. It goes 3, 3, 9, 6, 6, 9. So I've done it again on another diagram here. So what Rodin's excited about is a hexagonal sequence called 3, 3, 9, 6, 6, 9. And when I looked at those numbers, I realized that it's actually a unicursal hexagram, because he's obsessed about the Star of David in this matrix of 24. But when I look at this is my contribution. I'm calling it a correctional code, that we can actually create the unicursal hexagram in this sequence that he's wrapping into the torus. And I believe that's going to create what we call non-destructive energy. He calls it lossless kinetic energy, but I like to call it non-decaying, non-destructive, and it's all based on the unicursal hexagram, because those electrons won't interfere with each other. So that's my idea of the doubling of the Fibonacci code with the unicursal hexagram, that it's a continuous, smooth, and whereas his Star of David pattern, I believe, is fragmented. And then we've got Tesla, we've got a link to magic squares and Tesla, all based on these binary numbers. When we raise the power of 2 to 618753294, we end up getting 32,768, which is what quartz vibrates to. So Tesla's knowledge is also part of this coil. So now we have the finalized, we're wrapping those 3 threads into a 3-dimensional skin called the Torus hypersphere. A hypersphere means that it's a sphere, but it's imploded. It's more like the 4th dimensional view of the torus. So this is the torus here, where it's exploding, and on the other side it's imploding. So this is the universal thing. So visualize that he's wrapped these numbers, these 3 sequences, into the skin. So if I was to look at this, I would see, I want to find 1, 2. So if you looked at 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, but it keeps going through the wormhole, through that center point. So, and if you look closely, there's 3, 3, 9, 6, 6, 9. Remember I talked about the 6 digits? So if you look closely, 3, 3, 9, 6, 6, 9, I sort of get it. I don't get all the information on it, but that's my best way of simplifying all this energy. So he's calling it biomagtronics. Bio is biology, mag is magnetics, and electronics is electronics. And he's saying that the nation that controls magnetism controls the universe. So he believes that he's discovered what's called the non-decaying spin of the electron. So that's quite fascinating. Isn't that amazing that just from mathematical sequences, he believes he's discovered the immortal fountain of youth, because this doesn't just create levitation of magnets, this also creates torsion fields and beautiful energy that can be used for healing as well. So he calls it a biophysical harmonic, and he links it all back to the Baha'i. His personal teacher was from Arabia hundreds of years ago, called Baha'u'llah, and they formed the Baha'i faith. And Baha'i is all about, there should be one language on the world, one religion where we all honor each other's belief systems, and so he calls it like a universal religion. So he believes that all this knowledge that I've just talked about was transmitted to him through his Islamic teacher, Baha'u'llah. And here's another version of taking this torus and wrapping these copper coils in that intelligent, sophisticated sequence to create really what he's calling lossless kinetic energy. The torus skin, we believe, models harmonic cascadance. And so it's all about the 3 and the 6 are the magnetic dipoles, and the 9 is the invisible monopole. It would be the center of the torus. We believe that this is the black hole the plasma point that he's talking about. So just to conclude, how can we bring all of this information back to our own biology? And the way that I would conclude would say that this doubling sequence, the 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 to infinity, is really the memory of our conception. So in the beginning, we were one zygote, became 2 cells, and mitotically we became 4 cells. So at one point we were a tetrahedron, which is the pyramid. That's our deepest primal memory. And then the 4 became the 8, that 8 cells, there's 8 corners of the cube, we became 8. And then we became the torus after 512 cells, because that's one of the doubling numbers. We became the torus. And then what forms after 24 weeks, when the embryo became the fetus, at 24 weeks we developed the first sensory organ. So the heart was the first organ to form in the center of your torus, and then the ears formed, which kind of developed another spiral called the cochlea, and there's crystals inside the ear of calcium carbonate. So our first organs to form were crystals and golden spirals, and that's when we started to hear our mother's heartbeat, how the ears became the symbol for sonic frequency, which is the future of the next generation of good technology. Thank you. If you enjoyed this 15-minute dialogue, I've actually got a 40-minute PowerPoint where I've gone into a lot more detail and high visual content. So just go to the link below and you'll be able to see it and